You have prayed about the anxiety, you have journaled about it, you may have gone to even therapy, and you are still anxious, still wired at 2 a.m., still snapping at the people you love most. And part of you is starting to wonder if this is just who you are now. You were not always like this. You used to be patient, you used to sleep, you used to feel like yourself. But somewhere in your 40s, something shifted. The peace you used to feel just disappeared. And you can't explain it because your life is actually fine. You love your family, your faith is real, but the anxiety is still there underneath everything every single day. After 28 years in medicine and working with thousands of women who came to me carrying an anxiety diagnosis that was not giving them answers, I started seeing a pattern that completely changed how I approach this. But what I never expected was that for so many of these women, the anxiety diagnosis was not wrong because of something in their mind. It was wrong because of something happening in their body that nobody bothered to look at. And until that piece is found, nothing else fully works. I'm going to walk you through the 5 warning signs that your anxiety may not be a mental health problem at all, and what that means for what you actually need to do differently. Your anxiety appeared without a reason, and that matters when you went to your doctor and described what you were feeling, the racing thoughts, the constant low level dread, the inability to settle. They gave you a diagnosis, generalized anxiety. Maybe they added that stress hormones or life circumstances could be contributing, and that framing made sense on the surface. So you accepted it and tried to work through it. But here is the thing about anxiety that has a psychological root. It almost always has a traceable cause, a period of sustained stress, a trauma, a pattern of worry that goes back years. What does not fit that picture is a woman who was calm her entire life, had no significant life change, and then woke up one day in her late 30s or 40s with an anxiety that came from nowhere and has not left since. That timing is not random, it is information. And an anxiety diagnosis without asking the question of when it started or what else changed at the same time is an incomplete diagnosis. If nothing in your life changed, but everything in how you feel changed, something physical changed and nobody looked for it. And here's where it gets interesting because what that physical change looks like from the inside is almost identical to what a mental health disorder looks like from the outside. Anxiety that arrives without a psychological trigger is your body signaling something, not your mind creating something. I think about a patient I saw who had been in therapy for 2 years, was on her second SSRI, and sat across from me completely defeated. She said she had done everything right, the therapy, the medication, the breathing exercises, and she still felt like she was white knuckling every single day. She was not resistant to treatment. She was being treated for the wrong problem. Once we figured out what was actually driving her symptoms, everything changed. The anxiety that 2 years of mental health treatment could not touch resolved within months. When you stop treating the timing of your anxiety as a coincidence and start treating it as a clue, you start asking completely different questions. And different questions lead to different answers. But the second sign goes even deeper. It is not just about when the anxiety started, it is about what the anxiety actually feels like in your body. Your anxiety feels physical, not just mental, and you are not imagining that. Most anxiety frameworks treat the body as secondary. The mind is anxious and the body reacts. Calm the mind, calm the body. That is the model. So when you try medication or deep breathing or cognitive techniques, and that physical part, the tight chest, the racing pulse, the sense that your body is running even when you are sitting still does not fully respond. You assume you are doing it wrong, or that your anxiety is just more severe than most, or that you need a stronger medication. But what if the physical sensation is not the body reacting to an anxious mind? What if the physical sensation is the starting point? Because there's a category of anxiety where the nervous system itself is dysregulated at the physical level. The body is producing the signal first. The racing thoughts, the dread, the worry, those come after. They are the mind trying to make sense of a body that will not calm down. not the other way around. And when that is what is happening, no amount of cognitive work will fully fix it because the cognitive tools are aimed at the wrong end of the problem. You cannot think your way out of something that is not starting in your thoughts. But here is what makes sense that is so hard to catch. The experience of it feels exactly like every other description of anxiety you have ever read. The difference between anxiety that starts in the mind and anxiety that starts in the body is not in the symptoms, it is in what responds to treatment and what does not. Think about what happens when you are genuinely frightened. A car that cuts you off, a phone call that startles you, your heart races, your breathing gets shallow, your body goes on full alert. That is your nervous system doing exactly what it is designed to do. Now imagine that response firing constantly without any car, without any phone call, without any threat. Just that physical sensation of alarm running all day, every day, for no external reason. And when it is happening to you, your brain will find reasons to justify the alarm because a mind that is physically flooded with stress and signals will search for something to attach them to. The worry is what your brain invents to explain the feeling. When you understand that the physical sensation may be the source rather than the symptom, you stop blaming your faith, your mindset for not being strong enough to overcome it. You start looking for what is driving the physical signal in the first place. The third sign is a set of questions you can answer right now to tell whether your pattern fits what we are talking about or whether it points somewhere else. If this is connecting with something you have been trying to name for a long time, this is exactly why I make these videos. I put out new content every week to help women get real answers about what is happening in their bodies. Subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next. A pattern test that tells you whether this is your situation. Every provider who has asked you how your anxiety has asked about your life, your stress, your relationships, your history. And those questions matter. But there is a second set of questions that almost nobody asks. Not about what is happening around you, about what is happening inside you. 3 questions that help identify whether this kind of anxiety is what you are dealing with. So, the questions. Did your anxiety start or noticeably worsen in your late 30s or 40s without a significant life event that explains the timing? When you feel the anxiety most intensely, does it show up as a physical sensation first, a tightness in your chest, a restlessness in your body, a low level hum of alarm before it becomes a specific worry or thought? Have you tried treatments for anxiety medication, therapy, or both, and gotten partial improvement, but never felt like it was fully addressed at the root? If you said yes to 2 or 3 or more of those, the pattern you are describing does not fit a straightforward mental health presentation. It fits something else entirely. And the treatments you have been offered so far have been designed for that first pattern, not the second. This is not a failure of your efforts or your faith. It is a mismatch between the problem and the solution being applied to it. What we are going to talk about next is why that mismatch happens and what it points to. The fourth sign is about the treatments themselves, specifically why the ones you have tried have not worked the way they should have and what that tells us. Why everything you tried only half worked. I want you to hear this clearly. If you have done the work, the therapy, the medication, the prayer, the lifestyle changes, and you are still not better, this is not evidence that you are beyond help. That is evidence that the root cause has not been found yet. This matters most right here at this point in the video because this is where most women give up. They try the prescribed path, it partially works. They assume the rest is just their cross to bear and they stop looking. But partial improvement to anxiety treatment is one of the most telling clinical patterns I see. It almost always means the treatment addressed one part of the problem while something else kept running underneath it, unchecked and untested. I had a patient who had been told her anxiety was well managed. She was functional. She was not having panic attacks, but she described her daily life as feeling like she was always pushing against a current, always working harder than the effort she required. Managed is not the same as resolved. When we finally looked at the full picture of what was happening in her body, the piece that had been missed was obvious. And once we addressed it, the current stopped. She told me it was the first time in 5 years she had felt like she was not fighting to stay afloat. Stop interpreting partial improvement as the best you can expect. Stop expecting managed when you actually want it resolved. Start asking a different question. Not how do I cope better with this anxiety, but what is actually producing it? Because if you have done the work and it has not fully worked, the answer is almost certainly not that you need to work harder. It is that something physical has not been looked at yet. So what is that physical piece? That is exactly what the fifth sign is about. And this is the part of the video that I have been building towards. The root cause almost nobody checks and what to do about it. Here is what I have seen consistently across 28 years and thousands of women who have presented exactly the way I have been describing. When anxiety arrives without a physical trigger, when it has a physical quality that mental health treatment cannot fully reach, when it started in the 40s alongside other shifts the women could not explain, the root is almost always hormonal, not physiological, physical. And hormonal anxiety is not treated by adjusting your mindset. It is treated by identifying and addressing what has changed in your body. Here's what that means in plain language. Your body makes a hormone called progesterone. Progesterone is your natural calming system. It works on the exact same receptors in your brain that anti-anxiety medications target. When progesterone drops, and it is one of the first hormones to decline in your 40s, your nervous system loses its ability to settle. Not because something is wrong with your mind, because the fuel that runs your calming system is running out. This is not a mindset problem. That is not a faith problem. That is a biology problem with a real solution. And it almost never shows up on a standard blood panel because most doctors are not looking for it. You were not failing at managing your anxiety. You were managing the wrong problem. Before your next appointment, I want you to write down these 3 things. When your anxiety started, as specifically as you can remember, and what else changed around that same time? Your cycle, your sleep, your energy. Every time you have tried, and honestly, how much of the problem it resolved. Not managed, resolved. The last time you had a full hormone panel run, specifically estrogen, progesterone, and cortisol. If it has never happened, write that down. Then take that paper to your provider and say, I want to rule out hormonal root before we assume that this is purely a mental health issue. Can we run a comprehensive hormone panel? This is not a video telling you to ignore your mental health. Therapy matters, faith matters, but neither one can fix a hormonal deficiency. If you have been doing the work and the anxiety is still there, that is not a sign you need to work harder. It is a sign something physical has not been looked at yet. You deserve that answer. Go find it. If this connected with something you have been carrying for a while, go watch my video on everything Christian women have been told about hormone therapy. That is wrong because the root we uncover today is exactly what that video addresses, and it will show you what your options actually are. It is on your screen right now and linked in the description. I will see you there.